Good morning, it's Lance here for Best Day Ever Mountain Biking, and I'm here in Crankworx once again. Love it here in Crankworx, and we're going to demo the Trek Rail e-bike. One of my friends, Brent's got one, he loves it, so very keen to see what it's like. I'll explain a bit more about the bike on the way up the hill, but anyway, come join me. Okay, so the Trek Rail, this is actually the Rail 7, a 160 travel 29er e-bike, and I think this one's an alloy version. This is the cheaper version. They do come in a fancy carbon. I think it's the 9. A friend of mine's got that one. This one I think retails, I looked on the website, at 8,500, so pretty good value for a bike, for an e-bike anyway. I guess let's see what it's got. It's got a RockShox Yari, a fork at the front with a RockShox Deluxe RL on the rear. The drivetrain is a combination of sort of XT and SLX with a XT 12-speed derailleur and a Trans-X seat post. I think it must be one of Shimano's own seat posts. Got Shimano 4-piston brakes, and also the battery, 625 watt-hour battery. That's pretty standard on most of these Bosch bikes these days, and it's running the Generation 4 Bosch motor, so that's the new one. The bike weighs in, I think, approximately 23.6 kgs. If you watched my previous video, I also did a review of the Scott Genius, and that weighed in at 23 kg. So again, a very similar sort of weight. Alright, what about geometry? Head angle 64.9, let's call that 65. Seat tube angle of 75, and sort of 470 reach. So again, modern geometry, very, very similar to the Scott Genius in terms of geometry, and I must admit I jumped on it and felt very much at home right off the bat. Now, one thing I would say is, if you're listening to it, is the noise of the motor is pretty horrendous actually on this one. If I was demoing this bike, and I would never buy it with this noisier motor. Saying that, it's a Bosch motor, it's the same as all the other Bosch motors, and I did find out that apparently these Bosch motors can be quite noisy when you buy them, and after 300 to 400 k's they kind of mesh in and the noise reduces considerably. So that's useful to know. So if you do demo a brand new bike and it sounds terrible, apparently the noise gets better, because at the moment it's not great. Okay, it's also got Trek's own Bontrager, not sure if I've said that right, Bontrager, 29er wheels. Now, my experience of these and other people I know is they're made of cheese, and not a particularly hard cheese at that. Now, my friend Brent, who's got his Trek rail, he put Cushcore on it before he even went for the very first ride to try and protect those rims. I think Cushcore is a good option for e-bikes, but yeah, these rims are quite soft. I rode a Trek Slash once, took that for a ride in Fort William. I absolutely loved it, actually thought it handled really well, but I must admit did return the bike with a massive ding in the wheel and a good buckle in it. So yeah, the rims they don't have a reputation for being particularly strong, so if you were getting this bike, I think probably some form of rim protection would be a good idea.
Go on, go for it, mate.
Okay, so the bike went up the hill fine, as they always do. I must admit, I've never ridden an e-bike yet, which I thought, oh, I can't get up a hill on it. I guess they're always going to be easier than a normal bike, and so climbing is never a major issue. So it's always how well does it handle downhill. And I must admit, this thing did handle very well. Nice geometry, the suspension, although not top end, seemed to work pretty well. And yeah, I felt quite confident on the bike straight off the bat. It did have a rattle, I must admit. It's funny you don't notice it as much when you're riding, but when you watch the footage back in with the normal volume, and I must admit I do cut down the volume so you can hear my talking a little bit, but there was a noticeable rattle. Now, if you watch the last video on the Scott Genius, it also had the same rattle, and I think it is an issue that they have with sort of the design of these batteries and the Bosch setup, that sometimes they actually seem to shake and get a rattle on. So wasn't terrible, but yeah, it was noticeable. Now, I think this bike is transformed. I've ridden quite a few Trek Powerflies. They seem to be quite a common hire bike overseas, and so got to ride quite a few of them. And to be honest, the thing was a pig. It was one of those things that put me off getting an e-bike.
It was great climbing the hill and it was good to get around, but as soon as you descended on the thing, you realised it was a big compromise to riding the thing. It just felt like a pig. Huge fat tyres that didn't roll well, and geometry that just didn't feel aggressive. This, on the other hand, is a much more modern geometry bike. Feels confident downhill, feels good in the air, 29er wheels, normal sized tyres. This thing rolled really well and really enjoyed riding it. So yeah, if you've got one of the old Powerflies, this thing is a completely different bike, a much bigger improvement.
Downhill chop for locking the tire.
I guess the big test in any review is the big question, would I buy it with my own money? And I've thought about this a little bit. I think I actually would. I like the look of the bike, I like the way it handles. It's also, and probably the reason I would buy it is probably on price. It's very competitively priced. I've looked on the website. I know Brent bought his. He got it he got the carbon one, but he got it at a very competitive price, cheaper than I think it's listed on the website at the moment. So Trek do some pretty good deals, pretty good manufacturer of bikes, and yeah, I think I would actually buy this bike. So I guess this one gets me the thumbs up. The bike's not perfect. It's a noisy motor, it rattles, and you could possibly improve a few of the specs. I might swap the brakes out, and it would be nicer to have a better fork, and maybe you would step up to the next model. But yes, I think the answer is yes, I would actually buy this bike.
Well, that was a lot of fun. That was my review on the Trek Rail e-bike. I think I'd give this one the thumbs up. I would actually buy this bike if I needed one. I think they come at pretty good value for money. So, yep, like the bike. If you like the video, don't forget to click on the logo about here and subscribe, and look forward to seeing you on the next one.